discussing some things on the EC2 section yet, and today we'll be discussing about the last part on the EC2. So let me quickly go ahead and open up the notepad as well the presentations. So in the last part of our section, we had a discussion on what is a placement group and what is EFS, it is Elastic File System. So today we'll be talking about the CloudWatch and then the Lambda, which is going to be the last part of our EC2 section. With that, we will be moving on to a very next section that would be more about how we host the domains in the real time, how we start creating our own private clouds, how we start working with the databases and the other things, right? So quickly moving towards the CloudWatch. So I'll go down to the AWS console, and in the services, if you see in the management section, we have something called as CloudWatch. It's the management and governance. So once we start spinning up the machines, and then we want to now go ahead and check out how the system is performing, what is happening with the system over the period of time, we can actually get it checked via CloudWatch. Right? So I'll quickly open up the CloudWatch. Yeah, so there we go. So this is the CloudWatch, which is now being getting loaded up. So on the left hand side, we see a lot of things actually being available for us. So we will start from bottom to top here, which will help us to easily understand what we actually do with the CloudWatch. Now, the very first thing I would like to talk is about on the metrics. Right now, if you remember, whenever we spin up either a S3 bucket or maybe a EC2 instance, we do get some amount of metrics, right? So the metrics could be in any state. Like if I talk about the EC2, we have different kind of metrics like CPU utilization, disk utilization, network packets, and the status checks and the other things we would be basically getting through. Similarly, in terms of S3, we would be getting in terms of what is the storage we have done in the bucket, how many objects does that exist in the bucket, and the other things. So let's quickly have a look at it on from the CloudWatch perspective. How can I start looking the metrics in a better way? So I'm already there inside the metrics section, and if I go ahead and click on the EC2, so here if you see, it's actually showing you all metrics. There are different tabs. So all metrics, graph options, and then source. Right. So we are checking onto the all metrics section here, which is basically showing me what are the different services currently we are using and for which we have these things available. Right. So if I click on the EC2 here, so it is going to show me per instance metrics. So what are the metrics available at an instance level? So now if I go ahead and scroll the page here, so you can see it is actually showing me 64 different kinds of metrics which are available at this point of time. So there could be any of the instance which could be running at this point of time, and it is showing it for that, right? So I can go ahead and get the instance ID if I have any, and then it will easily help me to find it out. So in case if we are not sure if any of the instances are running, you can actually use this resource group tag editor, and then let's check it if there is an instance which is running. Mostly I think it's not, but still let's see through. So I'll select all the regions here first. And then in this, I'll just select the EC2 and the instances section, and then say find resources. Right, so currently I do not have any instances as it's running. So it basically says I have no results are coming up here. So it's okay. So in case if you have any instance, basically these will be the metrics that we'll be able to see through. So let's say if I pick up this instance ID, which is currently showcased up, which might be, I guess, over the weekend or maybe in the last week when we have used any of the instance, that instance ID is basically coming up. So if I just use this specific instance ID and search, it is basically going to show me 16 different kinds of metrics in terms of disk, in terms of network, in terms of CPU, and in terms of status checks, right? So there are overall 16 metrics that we usually get it on the board for EC2 instances. For any single instance, we can get up to 16 different metrics. And remember, which metrics is not available? RAM is not available here. So we have to specifically go ahead and configure the RAM by writing a custom matrix. So for that, we are going to do a lab, but during the application services part, we'll do a lab on how to configure RAM as a custom matrix inside the EC2 instance. However, as a part of default matrix, we just have CPU and then the disk and the networking and then the status check. Now, in this, let's say I want to find out about CPU utilization of this machine. So I'll go to C. So this is the one. So on the top, as you see, the graph should basically appear, right? So it's basically showing in the last 3 hours what has happened with the instance. So as we see, we do not have any instance. So maybe I'll just pick it up as a last maybe 1 week, and then it will show up some metrics. Yeah. So in the last 1 week, I guess in between the 20th and the 21st. So sometime we had used this one, right? So I guess on the 21st we had done small lab. During that point of time, this metric has come, and here you can see the different options that you would like to check through. Either it could be a line, it could be a stacked area. So stacked area will be looking better while we have a portion of the graph ranging from maybe certain amount of time to certain amount of time, so that you'll be able to see the area colored in the specific way. And then you can also see the numbers if you want to see through. So currently this instance is not live, so the number is coming as hyphen hyphen, right? So currently if you want to see the graph, the line is better one to go with, right? And in case if you want to add multiple EC2 instances, we should be able to add it as well, right? So all you have to do is, now if you see in the graph the matrix, one number has already come up which we have selected. Similarly, let's say I want to add one more EC2 instance, so I'll just say cross, and here I'll pick up this instance ID, let's say. So I'll go ahead and set the CPU utilization on this instance as well. So now you can see I have two graphed metrics, and here both of the instance IDs are being showcased. So if I go to graphed metrics, it will show me the instance IDs, it will show me the details, whether it's what it is. So it's a EC2 instance, and we are trying to calculate CPU utilization, and this is the EC2 instance ID, and the average that we are using is statistic is the average. So you can change it here, either you want to have minimum, maximum, sum, sample count, what kind of metric you want, and what is the period you want it for. So whether you want it for every single minute, and how it's going to appear, right? So it's up to us on how we want to define this graph with. But remember, since we have just enabled a basic monitoring, so it will have the graph only for every 5 minutes, right? So even though if I say 1 minute, it might not be able to draw the graph because the matrix itself doesn't flow to the CloudWatch at a rate of every single minute. The reason because we have enabled only the basic monitoring. And if you want to set up some alarms, you can actually directly create here itself, saying that you want to get notification on the basis of CPU utilization for this EC2 instance, and then you can set out the average and the period, everything here. So you can, all you need to do is just give the name, description, and when you want to get this alarm triggered, right? So you can also create the alarm, and if you want to copy or duplicate this metric, you can do this, and if you say cross, it is going to remove the metric from this point, right? So that is about the graph options. So in the graph metrics and the graph options, you can actually set across what you want on the y-axis and what you want on the left axis, right? So you can actually define your own custom metrics and then say what you want to have a look at it. And then finally it shows the source. So source is basically, it's being showcased in the JSON format. So here is basically showing that we are trying to find the metrics in terms of CPU utilization for this specific EC2 instance. Right? So it's basically showing me the JSON format of how we are trying to retrieve the metrics here. So that was all about the metrics. Similarly, you can also go ahead and find it out for some other things. So maybe let's say I want to find it out for S3 buckets. I can just scroll the page. Okay, so currently it's not showcasing me anything on the S3 metrics. So maybe you want to find out something on EFS. So you can just go to the EFS, and then it is automatically going to show you the metrics which are related to the EFS, right? So if you want to find out how many connections are currently connected to the EFS, so this will help us let know how many connections were there. So currently if you see here, so one green color dot is basically appearing up. So here if you see, one green color dot is currently appearing, which is showing 1 as a number, right? So we had one connections happening on the EFS on the other day while we tried to do the lab, right? So this way we will be able to see all the metrics about the AWS resources which we have created in our console, right? So that is from the metrics point of view. Now when we come to the logs, so when we come to the CloudWatch logs, so basically we have to go ahead and create the log groups, and then we'll be able to start flowing the logs within it, right? So if you see here, currently it is trying to show me that nothing is being set up for this AWS account for this specific region on the CloudWatch logs. So if I go ahead and say let's get started, so it's going to show me that how do I need to get started with, right? So all I need to do is create a log group. But before we create it, let me show you something in here, which this diagram is basically showing up. Right now, let's say I have a EC2 instance and I want to get all the logs of that EC2 instance in this CloudWatch log. How we get it? So basically, we'll have to install the CloudWatch logs agent, right? So usually, if you pick up Amazon AMI, the CloudWatch log agent would be already there. You just need to enable it. And once you enable the CloudWatch log agent, and then we say that to which log group it has to send the logs, automatically the logs will flow in, right? So first we need to install the agent and run that agent. So once we are done with it, we need to just tag it to the specific AWS log CloudWatch log group, right? Once we create that log group and tag to it, so we will be able to monitor the complete machine as well. We'll be able to see through all the logs which are flowing in. So if I click on create log group, so it will just ask me to create log group. So maybe I might have a lot of resources in my AWS, right? So I need to create different log groups. So maybe let's say my application is about blog. So I'll just say blog application. So I'm just creating one log group with the name blog application. So inside this, I can have my logs flowing in, right? So if you see here, I have only one log group at this point of time. So you can create multiple depending upon your own choice, right? So why we have to create a log group? It is because I might be using many services inside of AWS, and if all of them start flowing the logs within this, I might not know which log is coming for which of them, right? So first we need to create a log group, and to that specific log group, I can actually start sending the logs. So maybe let's say if I have developed one EC2 instance on which I have hosted a web-based application where I can actually start writing my blogs. So that blogs, whatever logs I'm getting, I want to get into this specific log group itself, right? So now that the log group is mentioned, so when I install the agent inside that EC2 instance, I just need to mention that this is the log group where all the logs need to come through and flow, right? So here, once I go inside this, I should be able to see all the logs. Right, so CloudWatch logs basically work with the help of two cases. One is creating the log group, and second is install and running the CloudWatch agent. We call it as CloudWatch agent to be running across inside the EC2 instances or anywhere else from wherever we want to get the logs. So next is about the events. So if I go down to the events here, so actually I can go ahead and create some events as and when required. So let's say I want to actually take the backup of EBS volume every night. Now it might become a tedious task if I do it manually. So we'll always think about how to automate that, right? Similarly, those things can be actually done within the CloudWatch events, right? So here we can actually go ahead and set across the rules and to which target it has to pick up and from what where it has to do, we'll be able to do through. So if you see here, the three patterns which are actually given up. So it says basically determine the events of your interest. So what are the events that you want to see through? Basically, it might be a automated event or it could be a scheduled event at some point of time for one single day to happen, right? It can be anything. So first you can determine what kind of things you want to develop, and then you can start writing the rules for that, right? So if you have the backup of EBS volumes to be created, but for multiple EC2 instances, then you can start writing the rules as well, and then which target it has to hit, whether it is a EC2 instance, whether it is S3 bucket, whether it is a some other AWS service as well, right? So you can actually go ahead and start writing the rules depending upon that. So if I say get started, so here it will ask me, right? So it's going to ask me whether it's going to be a event pattern or whether it's going to be a schedule, right? So event pattern basically means, like let's say someone uploads an object in the S3 bucket, then the backing up should happen. That could be a event, right? So that is the one. If I say schedule, so every day at so and so point of time, I want to run this schedule, right? So I can just go ahead and say I want to run it every 5 minutes or maybe something as such. So maybe let's say every single day I want to actually go ahead and run this rule. and the target would be, so you can say here what is your target. So you can see multiple things. So I can say that maybe at every day night I want to create a snapshot, right, of the EC2 machine, so that I will be able to have all the backing up of that. So I can say snapshot, right? So I can just enter the EBS volume ID, which is the one for which I need to get the snapshot done, right? So here he automatically go ahead and get this thing done for me. So you can add multiple targets as well, right? So this is basically the rule that we are writing, and then we are trying to define on the basis of pattern or a schedule, and this is the target which we are trying to look further for. So it could be any of this. So you may want to stop the EC2 instances, or you may want to actually create a snapshot, or you may want to actually trigger a lambda function, or you may want to get a notification as well. It could be anything, right? So maybe you also want to get a SNS notification once the snapshot is getting created. So at the same time I'll say I would like to trigger SNS topic, and this topic will actually talk about, so here you can see it says about matched event. So if it is about the same event we want to get SNS topic, I can use the matched event, and then I can configure the details. So it will automatically let me know that it is actually going to take a snapshot of this, right? So with the events we can actually go ahead and start scheduling the things. And next is about alarms. So we just saw that in the metrics we will be able to get through a overview of lot of different AWS resources, right? So it could be EC2 instance, it could be S3 bucket, it could be anything, right? So let's say now if I really want to go ahead and find out the metrics about one of my S3 bucket. Since currently we are in North Virginia, let me shift down my region to Mumbai. Maybe I'll be able to get some metrics for S3 bucket. So there I am back in the Mumbai region. So maybe what I'll try to do is I'll try to create one alarm. So while creating an alarm, you first need to understand what is a metric. So we already saw what is a metric. So first let's go ahead and select a metric here. So if you click on select metric here, it's going to show you all the AWS resources which are used in this Mumbai region. So here I have about S3. So I can click on S3, and then the storage metrics. So in terms of storage, I do get a lot of different options. So let me see through what are the metrics I get. So basically I get four different kinds of metrics. One is about the number of objects, and one is about the bucket size. So I have two different buckets for which I'm getting this. So maybe let's say I want to get the number of objects from AWS training 2022. So here if I actually try to make a change in the graph, maybe I'll just say number, and then maybe in the last 4 weeks in terms of line. Yeah, so you can see here there are basically 6 objects inside this over the period of time. Now if I say it as a stacked area, you can see how it is going to appear. So stacked area will basically fill the color, right? This is basically a stacked area. So you can see over the few weeks I actually had some number of objects until 21st or 22nd. Yeah, it was up to 21st. After 21st, the objects were deleted, so nothing exists anymore. But until then, there were 6 objects inside this specific bucket. Let's say I want to select this metric. So on the basis of this metric, I can actually go ahead and start creating a alarm as well. So I say whenever the number of objects is greater than, so currently we saw that maximum this bucket had was only 6 objects. So whenever the number of objects will go over the 10, I would say I would like to receive a notification in terms of email, right? So I can just give the name of alarm, right? So if I scroll the page a little more down, it will ask me what kind of alarm you would like to get through, right? So I would like to get in the form of email, right? So here you can send, here it is asking which the notification should be sent to which topic, right? So I'll say ASG notification is the topic I would like to send it, where the email ID is already pre-configured, and then I can say create an alarm, right? So this way I'll be able to create an alarm on the basis of a specific metric that we have just now selected. So it's going to just check that whenever the number of objects in that specific S3 bucket which we have selected is greater than 10, it will treat this alarm as missing, and then it is going to trigger the alarm to this email ID, right? And if I say create alarm, it gets created. This is where we can actually play around with the alarms, right? So in the alarms we have three different states: okay, insufficient, and the alarm, right? So usually it will be either in the state of okay or insufficient, and whenever the metrics basically start flowing in and it thinks that the alarm has triggered, so it will go into the alarm state and it will trigger an email notification, and then again it will come back to okay state as such, right? So you will be always able to see that your metrics, whatever we have created in terms of alarms, keep moving in either of these three states, either in alarm or insufficient or in the okay state. So here if you see, I had actually created a WordPress server long while. So for that I had actually kept this auto scaling group which had the CPU utilization as the alarms, right? So you can see here whenever the CPU utilization was less than 5 for a period of 15 minutes, I used to get a trigger of the alarm, and whenever the CPU utilization is greater than 50 for a period of 5 minutes, I used to get a CPU utilization alarm of greater than 50. So currently if you see, it is insufficient because this instance itself has been deleted, so it doesn't have any data to display through, so it has been into the insufficient mode. So if these instances were in running mode and would have been within the threshold, then it would have been in the okay state, which means everything looks okay, nothing going bad. And once if the alarms breach this point, it actually comes into the alarm state. You can also set up an alarm for your billing, right? So if I go back again to North Virginia, I'll be able to set this up. Let's do it again. I'll go back to North Virginia. To North Virginia, I'll actually go ahead and click on the billing section. So here you can see, so maybe as a part of free tier, we do not get a direct notification. So if you want to set up an alarm for your AWS account, you can actually come down to this one and set it across. So you can say that I want to create a new alarm on the basis of the billing. So here you can say whenever the total charges on your AWS account is going to exceed more than $5, please send an email to my specific email ID, right? So this could be one small alarm that you may want to go ahead and check it, create it, so that you get a direct notification to your email whenever the charges are going to exceed more than $5. Or else it would be like every time I have to log in into the account and then come down to my billing dashboard and see through what is the bill for my current month, right? Rather, I guess this will be much more easier. So just go down to the CloudWatch section, and in the billing section you can just go ahead and create an alarm, right? So you can just say whenever the charges for your AWS account are going to exceed more than specific set of dollars, please send a notification to this email ID. So if you do not have this email ID part configured, so you can always click on the new list and it will ask you to create a email address here directly, and then it will automatically send the alarm there. Right, so this is something that you may actually want to do it once you are done with this part of lab. And finally, we have the dashboard on the top of it. So currently I do not have any dashboard. So the beauty of the dashboard is you can actually go ahead and create one dashboard for your specific application. So let's say I have developed a application like Facebook. I have also developed a application which is something like blog. So I may want to actually see through what's happening with all the resources which are related to the blog, right? So I may have one S3 bucket, I may have one EC2 instance, I may also have a Route 53 domain, something as such, right? So with one project, I may have multiple resources attached to it. So what I can actually do is I can actually start creating a dashboard. So maybe let's say I'm trying to create a dashboard for my blog project. So I'll just say blog project and then say create dashboard. So inside this dashboard, I can actually add the most important metrics of all the specific resources which are related to my blog. So I'll always choose the line format here. That will be much easier with. Right, so it's directly taking me to which metrics would you like to check through. So maybe let's say for now, I would say I would like to check out the EC2 instance metrics. So let's say I want to check out about CPU utilization. So here I'll select the CPU utilization of 3 instances. Maybe let's say these 3 EC2 instances are basically the part of that blog project. So you can see here now I'll be able to straight away track across the CPU utilization of these 3 EC2 instances as and when required. Right. So straight away from here itself I can say I want it for 1 week. So on the top right hand side, if you see, you can start customizing it for what level of data points you want to look through. Whether you want it for 1 week or maybe for any specific 1 month or something as such. Right, so you can go ahead and take a configuration of what you would like to have it. So if you see, this is specifically for 21st, so I can say on the absolute level I'll say from 21st of December from morning to evening. I would just like to see the graph for this. So you can always give a specific time period as well, right? So it's basically showing me only for 21st. Now I still want to refine this. I can say that I want it only for, so this was at a UTC time period of 2:10. So I'll just say here from early morning 1 hours, I want it up to 03:59. Right? So this way you'll be able to refine the metrics a little more, and specifically in this dashboard, what we're trying to do, we are separating all the metrics of a single project into one, so that we'll be able to have a look at it in the easier way. Right? So hope you're able to get through, Shankar, on this part of the CloudWatch. Okay. Right, so CloudWatch is more about how we start handling our AWS account and what we actually check in terms of metrics for whatever AWS resources we have actually created over the period of time. So CloudWatch will actually help you to play around with most of the important things over the management perspective. That's why this service is categorized inside the management section, if you see. So it actually helps you to manage your AWS account in a very well format in terms of looking the logs for the application, or maybe automating some things with the help of events, getting the notifications on terms of billing, and also start writing the logs of the applications as well. And to put you out here, so as a part of a free tier, we usually get a certain set of dashboards for free, and that is about 5 dashboards we get for free, right? So currently I have just created one just as a part of cleanup activity. I'll just go ahead and delete this dashboard. So you usually get 5 dashboards as a part of free tier. So since my accounts are not a part of free tier anymore, I would actually better get it deleted. Right, so there we go, we have deleted it. Similarly, I'll also try to delete all these alarms which are not required. So let's remove everything what we have just created. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to talk is about the Lambda. Now, if you see in the compute section itself, we also get to look through for a service called as Lambda. And Lambda is actually picking up a lot of market in the days which are going to come in the future. So what does the Lambda basically do? Right? So let's go ahead and have a quick overview about it. I'll quickly open up one of the slides here. So Lambda is basically a theoretical part that we're going to have a look at. Yeah, so talking about the Lambda. So Lambda is basically a compute service where you can upload the code and create a function. Now we have heard about something called as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. But Lambda is something that is going to be the next future in the upcoming years where we'll start using the FAS, that is function as a service. Now I can start writing my code directly in a specific language, right? So Lambda is basically a compute function. So this will get triggered only when my necessity is there. So let's say I want to go ahead and trigger one function, which could be like, let's say someone has uploaded some object to S3 bucket and I want to actually modify that object. Once it gets uploaded, maybe I want to put a watermark, or maybe I just want to modify that object with a specific tags or other things, right? So now doing that manual task will be really tedious, but automating it would like surely help me. So for automating that, what we basically use, we make use of the Lambda functions. So we are saying that whenever a new object gets inserted into the S3 bucket, I would like to run this Lambda function, which is going to make the work much more easier for me in the future. So it could be something like this. Let's say I am hosting an Instagram application on the AWS, so where people can start uploading the pictures to the application. So a lot of people from their mobiles or from the desktop somewhere, they are trying to now upload the images onto the Instagram. So if you see, someone could upload an image which could be of very bigger size, someone could upload an image which could be of a normal size. It can be anything. But now let's say if someone is uploading an image of 10 MB, I cannot have the 10 MB of image being displayed to other users, right? So the moment I upload the image, it also showcases the same image to other friends as well, so saying that Pawan has uploaded some new image, maybe you are interested to see that as well, right? So what happens in here is we are just trying to reduce the size of the main image so that all the people who are trying to look at your image, they'll see a optimal size of that. So how we can do that? So basically, whenever the image gets uploaded, maybe what we can do is we can run this Lambda function, which is going to convert the file size of the image into appropriate size which is required with as per the Instagram standards. So this is basically a compute service. So I'm going to run this service only whenever it is required at any point of time, right? So in Lambda, we basically start writing the code in terms of, we call that as a function, and we start writing the code in terms of particular languages. So currently there's a support for .NET, there's a support for Java, there's a support for C Sharp, there's a support for Node.js and the Python. So I guess around 5 languages are being supported. Let's quickly have a look at it by going inside the service. So if I go inside the Lambda function on the AWS console, so if I start clicking on the create Lambda function, it will basically show me the runtime languages, what all languages are supported. So currently .NET is there, Go language is there, Java is there, Node.js is there, Python and Ruby as well. Right? So many languages are currently supported by the Lambda functions, right? So you can start creating the Lambda function here directly, and then support, say in which language you would like to write the code, and then straight away come down and click on create function. It will take you to the page where you can start writing the function. And the beauty of this function is, let's say if I write something in Java, right? So I don't have to depend upon a machine where the Java is completely configured, right? So today, if you want to run some Java code, what happens? So specifically, let's say I have given you a jar file to run it in your machine, but if the Java itself doesn't exist in your machine, you'll not be able to run that jar file or maybe any Java project if I give you. And if you really want to run it, what you have to do, you have to install the Java, configure the Java in your machine, and then you will be able to execute the jar file or a var file. Similarly, for Python or any other language, we have .py files. For the Go language, we have something else. For .NET, we have again some files in basis of .configs, something as such, right? So you will be able to run those files only when we have the specific softwares configured. But with Lambda, you don't have to worry about it. All the softwares are pre-configured for you in one of the machine where these Lambda functions are going to execute. So Amazon has pre-configured the machines for you, and you just need to write the function, and automatically that code is going to get executed there. So that is the beauty of Lambda. You don't have to worry about the configuration of the system behind. Everything is pre-prepared. You just need to say from where that file has to be picked up, whether it is the S3 bucket or whether it is an EC2 instance or whether it is something else. You just need to pick up the file, run that code, and then straight away you get the results and give the results back to the end users or maybe to AWS services itself, right? So there are two ways in which we will be able to use the Lambda. One is event triggered and one is compute service to run your code in response to HTTP requests. So these days people are also trying to use the Lambda function in response to the web pages, right? So if you talk about the hotstar.com or if you talk about the Netflix, the home page of the Netflix, if you see, it is basically a serverless, we call it as, right? Basically there is no server which is actually hosting the netflix.com homepage, because it knows that every day a lot of people will come and see how the homepage of Netflix looks, what all it is basically hosting, how do people start get created with the account as well. Now if a million people start hitting the homepage to just see what is there in it, it might actually consume a lot of CPU cycles. So in order to automate that, what Netflix has done, it has actually created a compute service which will run whenever the user is requiring. So if I say I want to open netflix.com, it will actually trigger a Lambda function, and that Lambda function is going to get a web page from the S3 bucket. So you may want to give it a try at any point of time in your life to just see how. For me, I'm not sure because I'm already a user. Yeah, so I'm a user of Netflix. I might straight away get the user base. So if I open it in some other browser, you can see the netflix.com, how it is going to appear through. The moment I see, it's going to trigger a Lambda function, and this is the home page of a Netflix.com. So you can see it's basically a static page which basically displays all the information about it, right? So you can just get started by creating one account and then see through all the movies and TV shows and other things, right? So this page, what we just saw now, is basically part of HTTP request response. And the other example of Instagram, what we spoke, is event driven, right? So whenever the S3 bucket is getting uploaded, we are trying to trigger a event here, right? So Lambda function can be used in two different ways. Now talking about the serverless architecture, which I was just talking about for the Netflix, this is how the architecture basically looks. So you may want to open the website from maybe a mobile browser or maybe a tab or maybe a computer or a laptop. So basically what happens is the request actually is being sent to the API gateway, and this API gateway is actually going to trigger a Lambda function, and this Lambda function is actually going to retrieve the file from the S3 bucket or anywhere else where it is kept upon, right? So if you have something like sign in on your web page, you can see here auto authentication service can also be collaborated together so that we'll be able to use a secure login. And if you have some video files to be displayed or something as such, we can start using the Firebase, which is basically a kind of streaming database where you can start storing the files, and those video files could be streamed all across on the web. And if you are also involved in payments gateway, so you can also use Stripe or something else as a credit card payments gateway. So this is how the complete architecture is being set across. So this API gateway is going to trigger a Lambda function, and this Lambda function is going to make use of any of these four services which are required at any point of time. This is how the architecture basically looks. And as we spoke about the different languages that Lambda currently supports, so there are around 4 to 5 languages. So it is Node.js, it is Java, it is Python, it is Go, and then .NET and Ruby. So currently, I guess there are 6 languages. That's a good support that they have got across recently. So 6 languages can be supported overall, and you can start writing the Lambda functions. So that was all about the Lambda and things. So we will start writing one Lambda function over the application services section. So I'll show you a demo of small Lambda function on how it works or how do we start writing it. So for now, we are just going to cover the theory section of the